Hello, I'm Ed, W4EMB. Welcome to episode 1 of my podcast. Today is January the 1st, 2026. Welcome to the new year. Today's podcast is going to be under a topic of learning CW and a subtopic of mistakes of the newbie. What were some of the mistakes that I made learning CW that I wish I could go back and change or let the next person coming along know early? Well, first off, I want to cover looking at that chart. We all know that chart that I'm talking about, whether you've seen it as a poster hanging up in someone's shack or whether it's on a mouse pad sitting on your desk. It's that chart that shows us the dits and the das for each of the letters and numbers and punctuation. A reference chart, a cheat sheet, a lookup, whatever you want to call it. That chart, that was a mistake made by me in my early on learning of CW. Is I used it to see what I needed to play for the letter. I used it to confirm what is that letter I just heard. So whatever rationale that I used in using that chart, I found out later that was an absolute mistake. It was a mistake looking at or having that chart altogether. The reason for me that it was a mistake was because that CW is all audio, and I introduced a visual aspect to the learning of CW. I created this visual lookup chart that even if when it wasn't laying in front of me, I was picturing it in my mind. And so I'm again adding that visual aspect to an otherwise audio activity. And that created space or gaps or delay in my decoding or in my encoding. And I found out later how badly that actually hampered me. So absolutely, if you have a chart, I'm not saying throw away a cool poster, but put it where you're not looking at it or have access to looking at it while you're trying to do your CW practice or you're doing your encoding or decoding. I found that chart did create that delay, and it was a setback. So lesson 1, don't use that chart. Don't use it. The encoding and decoding of CW should all be done by your ears. And that, of course, segues right into that word decoding. A decoder. That was probably the worst mistake that I made in my CW learning journey, and that was using a decoder. For whatever reason, to verify what I just heard. Yeah, was that the call sign I just heard? Yeah, okay, it was. No, yeah, that wasn't a good idea. Or setting up my decoder while I'm on my key and I'm trying to send and read the decoder to, well, I just want to make sure that I'm sending it correctly. I want to make sure that the letter's coming out right. Nope, absolutely the wrong way to do that. Because first off, it's a distraction. You're trying to look and read at the same time as you're trying to send and form your letters and build your characters and your words. So it's an absolute distraction. You can't read a decoder, read what you're sending, and send it all at the same time. It's a really distracting thing. Secondly, the decoder, and this is just a minor detail, but you have to calibrate it. Is it giving you just a bunch of T's and E's whenever you send something, rather than an A, B, or C? So you have to play with it. While you're playing that decoder, that's time you could be taken to focus on the learning of your letters themselves or your characters. But yeah, that decoder was horrible, and I used it. I'll admit it right here. I used it, and it stuck me on the longest and flattest plateau in my learning. It was absolutely horrible. I just couldn't fathom why I was stuck for so long when some of my peers that were on the journey with me were just going right past me. And I'd say, so are you using the decoder? No, not using the decoder. I was told, don't use that. I'm like, well, yeah, I know that's what they say, but I'm just using it to make sure that that I heard it right. I'm just making sure that I'm playing it right. Absolutely the worst mistake I made, using the decoder for whatever reason. If you want to know if you're sending correctly, then get yourself a code buddy and you send things back and forth using your ears because it's an audio thing, right? If you want to know if you're sending correctly, download a program like Audacity on your computer. Write you some things to say, whether it's if you're just learning your letters, write down the 3 letters you're learning this week, and maybe write down 10 sets of 3. R-E-A and E-E-R, A-E-A, whatever the letters are, you send them, record them, save that recording in a little folder, but don't listen to it today. Listen to it in about a week, but do that every day for a week, and you'll have a whole week's worth of recordings. But just when you name the file, maybe name it the date, and then keep you, of course, a notebook that says, hey, here's January 1st recording. Here's January 2nd recording. And then that way, when you open up your recording and you play it, you decode what you hear, and then you can check your answers in your notebook that you kept onto the side that has all your answer sheets in it. Decoder. The worst mistake I made. Next, probably the second worst, I shouldn't say worst mistake, but the most hampering thing. And that is practicing where I was comfortable. I didn't quite know what that meant. Because a person naturally, when you test yourself and you pass the test, you feel like you did a great job. You're like, all right, great, I'm getting it. Okay, I played 10 letters. I got all 10 of them. Yes. Well, but I fall apart when I start adding letters. So let me just keep practicing my single letters. Well, that kind of stuck me a little bit. I needed to practice where I was not comfortable. So I was very comfortable at giving myself 1 letter at a time with a bunch of Farnsworth or a bunch of effective speed space there between letters. But what I needed to do was I needed to force feed myself, 3, 4 letters at a time without that gap, without that Farnsworth, or with a faster effective, I'll say faster effective speed, but that's not what it is. It's basically when we say I'm listening to my letters at 15 words per minute, but all with a 5 words per minute spacing. Well, we'll call that 15 over 5. Yeah, that was bad. That was bad. What I needed to do was go ahead and give myself my letters at 15 words a minute, but just a flat out 15, and give them to myself in 2, 3 letters at a time at 15 words a minute. And just give myself, let's say, I set up my little Morse code player to give me, 10 groups of 3 at 15 over 15. Not for long durations, though, obviously. And what I mean by that is this: if you were a runner and you're trying to get a better run time, let's say that you wanted to run a 7-minute mile. Well, you wouldn't go out every day and just run 5 miles a day at 8 minutes a mile, because you'd never get to 7 minutes a mile. So maybe for run improvement, what you would do is you'd get on a long road that's got a bunch of telephone poles, and you're going to say, all right, from this telephone pole to the next, I am going to sprint as hard as I can. And then when I hit the next telephone pole, well, I'll jog and jog lightly. So in thinking like that, your sprinting is definitely more or faster than 7-minute miles. And your jogging is definitely slower than 7-minute miles. But what you're doing is you're doing it in intervals. You're running is really hard and fast, but for a very short period of time. Then you kind of take it easy, recover for a little bit. Then you run hard and fast again. Well, same thing with your CW practice. Play you some letters, a lot without that Farnsworth in between, and give them to you in short bursts. And you might hit play and you might get 1 letter for every other 3-letter group the first time you do it. Well, just do it again and do it again. Then take a break. Then do something that's a little less stressful. Then come back and try it again. Well, just like any other exercise, the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And eventually you'll get 2 letters per group. And then eventually you'll get all 3 letters in that 3-letter group. Then you know that it's time to go ahead and crank up your learning, or to crank up your difficulty. Maybe start giving them to yourself in 4-letter groups, 5-letter groups, but keeping your 15 words a minute. Okay? All right, well, folks, I'm Ed, W4EMB. And again, today is January the 1st, and the topic was mistakes of the newbie. And we covered looking at that chart, using the decoder, and practicing where I'm comfortable instead of where it's difficult. I hope that these topics were interesting to you. I'm going to upload this, see what kind of feedback it gets, and we'll see how it works out. I hope to upload another episode as soon as I can think of more topics and get them together. There will be no rhyme or reason on topics or order, for episode 1 into episode 2 into episode 3. They're just going to be all different topics, all mixed up. Just whatever I happen to think about, or if I come into conversation with another person. And it builds, I love that. It builds conversation. We talk about CW and all that stuff. Anyway, thanks for listening. I'm Ed, W4MB, and we'll catch you on the next episode, 72. Well, if you're QRP like you should be. Hi.